Good evening. I'd like to call to order the board meeting for this evening, August 11th at 7 p.m. Just as a reminder, the meetings of the Mechanicsburg Area School District Board of Directors are being recorded and live streamed for the purpose of transparency and increased public access. The live stream, along with recordings from previously held meetings, can be found on the school board's YouTube channel. At this point, please stand for Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. At this time, we will take a moment for silent meditation. And we'll move on to the roll call.
Yes, starting with Mr. Bradley.
Here.
Mrs. Dang.
Here.
Mr. Frenchel.
Here.
Mrs. Huff.
Here.
Mrs. Kearns. Mr. Kickline.
Here.
Dr. Lebo.
Here.
Miss Morgan.
Here.
And Mrs. Strelo.
Here.
Thank you. At this point, we would ask endorsement of the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda for this evening?
There are no changes and it will stand as written.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And also, we'd like to enter, if anyone has any issues or comments regarding the minute meetings from the June 9th. Wow, that seems a long time ago. From the June 9th board meeting. If there are none, then we will approve the minutes as they are written. Thank you. At this time, we are moving into the first of two opportunities for public comment this evening. As a reminder, public comment is limited to residents and taxpayers of the school district. At this time, we have reached that first opportunity for public comment. This opportunity is reserved for comments related to items that are listed on this evening's agenda for a vote. A second opportunity for public comment will occur at the end of the meeting. The second opportunity for public comment is reserved for comments on issues not listed on the agenda and not being voted upon. Public comment will be limited to 3 minutes per individual and requires community members to observe a reasonable decorum. If you would like to address the board, please share your name and the municipality in which you reside.
Seeing as there's little help to go around. My name is Eli Kickline. I believe, in the Bumblebee Hollow neighborhood. And I'd like to share a few of my thoughts on the school district's phone policy. So, pretty on board with everything so far. I do not believe that phones should be allowed during instructional time or in the hallways, just because it can be a big distraction and it's disrespectful to the teachers. However, on top of that, I also think that phones should not be allowed during lunchtime, because in a student's schedule, lunchtime is essentially the only opportunity to have free, non-academic conversation with others. And I think that by using phones, you're kind of squandering that opportunity. Also, for those who have trouble initiating conversation, that's me, it also makes it really hard for them, like, even without phones, it can be hard for them to, join in with friends or whatnot, and people being on phones seeming disinterested, that can also be a big issue. However, I do think that phones should be allowed during study halls or period 9. For one, if you don't have anything to do, it's not like you can socialize anyways, otherwise you distract fellow students. So I think being on a phone would be perfectly acceptable, to pass the time on your own terms. And I think that especially for the last study hall of the day, or IE period 9 in the middle school, I think that phones can also be really helpful when communicating with parents or guardians, say, sports event got changed, or they're going to be out of work late, you need to take the bus home, things like that. And I think that the school district should be more lenient, especially in that regard, allowing phones during like the end of the day, last period, if you have nothing to work on, communicate and otherwise spend the time. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. With that, we'll move on to item 3.01, Superintendent of Schools report. Dr. Benton.
Yeah, we'll hit a few items here. First one, just some updates about the beginning of the school year. So it is upon us. Hard to believe, I know, but as you said, June was a while ago. And here we are, we're ready to welcome our teachers back today and our students back next week. So last week, we'll start from the beginning. Last week we had our new teachers here, and they went through 4 days of induction training. We have a robust program for induction. We've continued to refine it over the years, continued to differentiate it as much as possible for the needs of different groups. Probably never as much as we have this year, because a vast majority of our induction class are actually some very unique positions. We have a number of counselors, we have a DHH teacher, we have a couple of MDS teachers, so we've got a number of student services and special education folks, which is great. It makes for a nice rich group, but definitely want to make sure that there are opportunities throughout that induction week and throughout this year are differentiated for their specific needs. So induction last week, we had a nice lunch with all the mentors and new teachers and administrators. Thank you to those of you who were able to join us for that as well. Mr. Bradley said some nice remarks on your behalf to the entire group. Then today was our first day with the full staff. I say all the time, it's my favorite day. Certainly from the standpoint of students coming back next week, it's very exciting, and for our teachers, I hope that's their favorite day, our teachers and principals. But for me, I get excited to have the whole team back together, because I know those are the folks that are going to make the magic happen next week when the students get here. So I love seeing the whole staff together, professional and support staff. And we had a bit of a convocation there this morning at the high school. We have a number of other welcome back events throughout last week and this week for our facilities staff. We go there and I speak to that group. For our food services staff, for our school safety officers, that's one night this week. So every group, we make sure that our bus drivers, we make sure every group is welcome back, and that we have a few words to be able to share with each one. And then of course students. Next week on Tuesday, we welcome back many of our students. K through 3 on Tuesday and Wednesday have a staggered start, so about half of them will come on Tuesday, the other half on Wednesday, and then everybody will start coming on Thursday. At 4 or 5, everyone will be there starting on Tuesday, and same with middle school, everyone starts on Tuesday. The high school, if you remember, is doing a staggered start this year, so the Link Crew program that you heard about last spring was really successful, and we want to make sure that every single one of our freshmen are involved in that. So the first day will just be our freshmen coming in, along with the Link Crew leaders, about 100 upperclassmen who will be there as mentors and be taking them through a series of activities, and then the freshmen will also go through their schedule for the second half of the day after lunch, where they'll spend a little bit of time in each one of their periods. And then Wednesday, our full high school will be back, and we'll be ready to roll for the rest of market period 1. So lots of excitement coming up. It's a very strange year. You've heard me say that before when we presented the calendar in the first place. I looked up, so it's September 7th is the latest that Labor Day can possibly be. And this is the latest it will be until 2037. So we'll see how we like to schedule this year, and we'll take note of it for when we get to 2037, of which we should do the next time Labor Day is this late. But it is different because we have an extra week right now before we hit that Labor Day week, or the Labor Day long weekend. So we'll see how we like it. If we like it with that extra week or not. Obviously, again, as Labor Day shifts back, it wouldn't be something we would continue doing anyway because it would make it way too early. But yeah, great start so far. So any questions about the start before I move on to some other topics?
2 quick points. One is I enjoyed your history lesson on the pride, tradition, and excellence. It was very informative, very good. And it's always a good thing to kick off and make you think about things. And the student that spoke did a very nice job with that. And then I had to chuckle. I sent Mr. Cowan a note earlier today saying he gets bonus points for the commercial that he played. My background is I grew up in EDS. That was my first company. And at the time that commercial came out, we were all taken back by it because it was completely opposite of, talk about a very military-based, very conservative company, and all of a sudden you had the cat herding commercial. If you've ever seen the cat herding commercial, it was from EDS, and we thought it was completely anti-EDS, just not our culture. And it became one of the most popular it was actually a Super Bowl commercial.
Yeah.
And it became one of the most popular Super Bowl commercials. And when the EDS logo popped up at the end, I was like taken back to, I won't say what year it was, but I was taken back to the year that it actually came out. And even Mrs. Bradley said something to me on my way out. She said, he gets bonus points for that EDS commercial, doesn't he? And I said, yes, he does. So, and if you've never seen it, it's a very funny, comical commercial, but bonus points for that. So. Thank you. It was a very, very good event.
All right. Well, a second topic I want to hit on is budget updates. So as you saw, shortly after July 1, and we will applaud that, we had a state budget go through. So I'm sure you've seen different things about it at this point, but just want to publicly be able to go over some of the information from that, some of the big highlights, if you will. So obviously state revenue, when we go into our budgeting process, we had to have our budget complete, and you all approved that budget through our meetings in the spring. But in that budget, if you remember, we did budget 100% of what the governor was suggesting that he wanted to see in the state budget this year. That's different for us. We usually hear what the governor says and we try and split the difference to be able to make sure that through their negotiations we hit the right amount. Well, time and again, throughout the fall and the spring, or the winter and the spring, the associations that we work with and all the folks that we work with at the state level continue to say, you should just budget with what the governor said. That's the right direction to go this year. And that was the right feedback, because that is where the budget ended up for us, which was terrific. So basic education funding for us was about $10.8 million. We're going to be getting about $37,000 more than what we had budgeted there with basic ed. Special ed, we saw a slight increase there as well, so we'll be getting about $2.9 million, which again, can't help but mentioning is a drop in the bucket compared to what we actually spend on special ed services, but conversation for another day. That is about $24,000 more than what we had budgeted. And then you may remember Ready to Learn, the adequacy supplement, which has been something that was added into the budget as an additional way to try and pump revenue into schools after the state Supreme Court case ruling came out a few years ago. We'll be getting about right around $4 million in adequacy, which was $510 less than what we had budgeted, so we're pretty close there. So in total, we're $61,000 higher than what we had budgeted, so that's means we were pretty much right on the money, and just in the black, so we're in the right direction there on that side of things. There were lots of omnibus school code changes that came through. So every year during the budget negotiations, part of those negotiations are both sides of the aisle saying, okay, well, we'll look at your terms here, but how about we also look at this bill that we've been trying to move through. So both sides have those, and by the end, there's always an omnibus bill that comes through with a whole host of changes in all different realms of life. For the ones that impact school code, there were quite a few. I'll just mention a few highlights. There's going to be some changes to bullying and cyberbullying policy. Specifically, policy didn't previously talk about cyberbullying, but that is going to be in there. One of the challenges with that we're waiting to see how PDE ends up describing this for us or interpreting the law is that there was a federal Supreme Court case, the Matanoy case recently in just the last few years, that really kind of clamped down the instances where a school district can go into outside of school hours and discipline a student for something that they've done. It really limited the number of instances that you can do that as a school district. Well, the new law suggests that we should be doing that more. So there is a little bit of a conflict there, I think, between what the federal Supreme Court ruled and what this new state legislation is saying. So we'll see how PDE ends up interpreting it and what all that means. Virtual wellness checks, that's not just for cyber charters, but that's also for our own cyber, making sure that students have touch points. We have those built into our program already, so it shouldn't be much of a change for us in terms of operations within our Keola program. But there will be, I'm sure, some information from PDE about what should happen if students don't attend those wellness checks, whether that means unexcused absences, whether that means attendance improvement plans, whether that means sending something to the district court. We'll wait for more information. 30 minutes of recess, that was one that got a lot of headlines. So guaranteeing 30 minutes of recess for all students in K through 5. Currently, we have 30 minutes for recess at our K through 3 level, so it's not going to result in any change for us there. 4-5 right now has 20 minutes of recess during the day, so this doesn't go into effect until next year, thankfully, because obviously our schedules for this year are built. But that'll be something that Mr. Underkoffler and his group will have to be looking at. There's some additional facilities kinds of code changes related to lead testing, a facility inventory that's being taken across the state, and a whole host of other items. We'll continue to learn more as PDE does interpret the legislation that's out there and begins to put out regulations. And then we'll also be staying in tune with PSBA and our other P group associations to be able to help us interpret what we need to do with our own policies. In fact, I have a webinar on Thursday with Saxon & Stump, our solicitor, to help guide us with some of the initial needs. So that's the state budget and the school code changes associated with that. Any questions on that topic?
I have a question.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're able to explain to us, but I understand like the Cumberland Valley School District got about $4 million in basic ed.
Probably adequacy. So they, I believe in additional adequacy, they had about a $4 million increase, not basic ed.
Yeah. It was adequacy, and I think specific to Cumberland Valley, they went back and adjusted some of the adequacy formula, and we could probably talk the whole rest of the night, and I enjoyed the conversation, but there's a lot of variables, suffice it to say, and they tweaked some of those variables that I think brought Cumberland Valley back more in line with other districts of similar standing in terms of adequacy funding, and it did affect Mechanicsburg to an extent, and Central Dauphin to an extent, but not nearly like it did Cumberland Valley, because early on, I believe they had gotten 0 adequacy in the first year or so. But,
Yeah, it's been pretty public, so despite it being another district, I don't mind saying, yeah, in the first year of the adequacy formula, they got no money, adequacy, $0. So their board has been pretty politically active in looking at that and advocating with the state to say, hey, and they did change the formula in year 2, and they have been getting, so there, I believe, was some catch up there. I would suggest that for us as a district, we're continuing to be, I would suggest, underfunded in both those realms when you compare us to other districts around the IU and around the state. When we do our check-in, I think you'll once again see that revenue per pupil, we are at the bottom of the IU. So we continue to face funding from the state that puts our revenue on the backs of our local taxpayers.
and some of the challenge too, and I've heard it suggested, or, people when they look at the adequacy formula or the funding say it could take 8 or 10 years of continuing to fund that formula to help catch the districts up. And so I think you could say, to Dr. Bitz's point, we're still not funded adequately, as evidenced by the fact that we probably need, as much as we appreciate those big dollars we're getting, we still have a number of years of that we need. And so that's some of what the state's trying to work through, is how do you fund that formula? Because to fund the formula and continue to increase it, it takes some pretty significant dollars. So, but more to come in the budget conversation. So.
And when you say adequacy, can you kind of give a short, what is adequacy?
So adequacy, really, the formula stems from the, I think it was 2023 or 22 maybe, Commonwealth Court ruling, where they said that the state wasn't funding schools equitably. And so the state's response to that from the legislature and the governor's office was to look at this additional formula, which is adequacy. Sometimes you hear it referred to as like ready to learn block grant, because they kind of like attached it to that. But generally speaking, it's the adequacy formula is what they're talking about. The adequacy formula then looked at a state level, all 500 districts, to say, what does some type of equitable funding look like? They looked at a lot of different variables, which some of them have changed. But ultimately, they know that they're not going to be able to catch everyone up in year 1. So they want to use that formula as a vehicle over the next, I'll say, I think we're in year 2 or 3 now, so maybe another 7 years. But over 8 or 10 year plan to say we want to continue to add dollars through this funding vehicle, funding formula, to try to really equalize the playing field. And so within that, you can still see, as Dr. Bitz mentioned, that we're only in those earlier years yet. So we're still not, you could argue, being equitably funded in this moment, especially as evidenced by the fact that our revenue per pupil is disproportionately low compared to where you might expect us to be.
Or the fact that I think we put more of the burden on our taxpayers than, the residents of Cumberland Valley School District does. So, seems inadequate a little bit to me.
Yeah, another way you could think of it is, so basic ed basic education formula uses one way to determine how schools get money. So when PA Court said that wasn't adequate, that it wasn't equitable to school districts, rather than change that formula, they said, okay, well, we're gonna keep going with that stream of funding, but we'll add this other stream of funding over here with a different formula to try and make up the difference. So now we basically have 3 streams instead of 2.
And that uses variables such as per capita income, population density, I'm just trying to think, what variable do we need to shift to give them money?
So I think for us, maybe it comes down to continue to advocate for more dollars to go into that funding line item, because I think something Dr. Bitz mentioned is, it's a subtle point but an important one. The state now has 3 main funding formulas, like, you look at special ed, basic ed, adequacy, those are the big ones that you look at in the governor's proposal, where before they had the 2 big ones, special ed and basic ed. So now you have this weird dichotomy at a state level with 500 districts where if you put more money in basic ed and less in adequacy, that might mean different things for different school districts. Or you put more money in adequacy, that might mean different things for different school districts. And so you've got legislators representing all 500 districts saying, no, we'd like more money in adequacy or more money in basic ed. I think from our perspective, because have been a growing district, we fare pretty well on basic ed. I think adequacy, though, is also a big issue. So personally, I like to see bigger chunks of money put into adequacy, but I also recognize the political landscape of what that means. So maybe variables are important. I don't want to diminish that, but I think maybe more important yet is just the raw dollars they're putting into these formulas and how they're distributing it among the different big three.
So would you expect that to go to our favor at some point here for us to be caught up?
I think in theory, when we reach the 10-year mark, that's the hope that all the districts that are getting adequacy funding, there will be that more level playing field. I think the biggest challenge is that's a pretty big horizon to fund a formula like that to the tune that it needs funded. And so how do they at a state level sustain that? I mean, to their credit, they've obviously done it to this point, and as Dr. Butch shared, we've got some pretty significant dollars over the last several years through the adequacy funding formula, but they still have a road to go to continue to do a lot of money.
I would suggest that there is room for us as a board, as a team, to be able to advocate in the same way that some of the other local districts have advocated. And we have a tremendous representative, Representative Kutz, that I know is open to hearing from us and hearing those conversations. We will have a new representative with Representative Delocher retiring. And obviously we have Senator Kiefer, and we're kind of on the outskirts of her region. So I think any kind of advocacy that we want to do, I think would be in our benefit.
I think that's something we should probably take on as a goal this year, so that we don't burden our taxpayers as much come next summer.
How does that advocacy take shape? And how do you see the role of the school board in doing that?
Well, I think there's the formal channels that exist through PSBA, the Advocacy Day, and some of those opportunities. But certainly I know that there's opportunity to contact them and reach out and have discussions with them at any other time as well.
He's in your buildings.
Yeah.
I know, we do different things in the parking lot.
It's good data. Great questions, great questions. All right, the third topic is, again, these were very varied topics, which is why I paused between each one to give you a chance to ask me questions that you had. So looking more specifically at a policy, the reality is that in that omnibus bill was not a policy that most people really expected to be in there, which was state action related to cell phones and personal devices in schools. Quick recap on where that is at the state level. Ultimately, I might have these backwards, it doesn't really matter at the end of the day, but the House had passed a version of the bill, sent it on to the Senate. The Senate did not completely agree on the wording that the House had passed, so they adjusted that and they passed their own version of the bill, and that's kind of where it stands at this point. So both chambers have to agree on the wording for any of this kind of legislation, and then obviously Governor Shapiro made a point in his address to say that he wants to see this legislation. He's prepared to sign legislation in this area. But obviously, even in the budget negotiations, that wasn't something that they ended up hashing out. So that continues to ping pong there in the state legislature. I think the fact that both sides have voted yes pretty strongly on something suggests that at some point something is going to go through. What exactly it is in terms of what devices it covers, whether it truly is bell-to-bell, whether it just hands things back to schools and says, hey, you have to have some sort of policy. All of those things are question marks at this point. But for us as a district, even before that, as part of our comprehensive plan, one of our goals was to be looking at screen time and looking at device use
and making sure that we're continuing to make developmentally thoughtful decisions about when we're putting students on screens and what access they have to different devices throughout the school day. And one of those things specifically called out was also personal use of cell phones. So our administrators have continued to wrestle with that with different groups of staff and students and conversations. And it's something that, again, came up in the spring and then summer at our retreat, at really having a desire to continue to take next steps regardless of what the state is going to do. So really what this conversation right now is to be able to preview what an administrative recommendation is and to get your initial feedback on that, for us to be able to go back and to do some wording with policy that we would be able to then bring forward for a first read. We'd like to do that at the end of this month, to get a first read of a policy and then have that voted on at the beginning of September. But we wanted to be able to have this opportunity for an initial conversation about it, and go from there. K through 8, quite frankly, isn't much of a recommendation beyond what they already do. K through 8 in our district for a long time has been your bell-to-bell approach. Students may not have a cell phone on or use a cell phone or personal device throughout the day. That has been the rule in primary buildings, Elmwood, the middle school for a while now. The middle school last year went somewhat of a small step further, even making sure that middle schoolers knew that the rule is that they can't have them on their person either, because they were trying to combat some of the issues they were having in bathrooms, because we had a number of situations where students were keeping them in their pocket, going to the bathroom, and at best using it when they should just be going to the bathroom and coming back, and at worst having some discipline issues in the meantime. So that went very well last year, that little bit of a tweak. That's not to suggest that nobody ever did that or it didn't happen, but they were prepared to address that as teachers or staff members if they saw something like that happening. So they feel very good about where they are at the K through 8 level. High school, quite frankly, has not been all that consistent to this point. There has, I still remember the days from a historical perspective of being an assistant principal there, where we first outlawed cell phones and navigating that. And then I know after I left, a couple years after that, they began to allow it. Then there really hasn't been a strong stance building-wide on what to do with cell phones. At this point, through last year, I would suggest most teachers had caddies or some sort of expectation that students were not using their cell phones during class time. Having said that, there was still a lot of ambiguity at the high school about, could you have it out if you're just using it to listen to music while you're working independently, something like that? Could you have it out during study hall? Could you be watching something during study hall? For a while now at the high school, they've allowed students to walk through the hallways with one earbud in, to be able to listen to music or something to that effect. That has also turned into students that have larger headphones to keep the headphones on, but just keep one on the ear and the other one kind of cockeyed to the side. But of course, we know, anyone who spent time in a high school, as we all did as students, that turns into, oh, I see a teacher, I'm going to keep it on to one side, and then as soon as you walk by the teacher, you put it back on your ear. So long story short, there has not been consistency in what we have done to handle this at the high school, and the staff is ready for that consistency. A policy is only as effective as your willingness and ability to enforce it. So really needed the administration to be in a place where they were prepared to take this on. So at this point, they would like to join their K through 8 colleagues in prohibiting cell phone use in instructional spaces to include study halls. because they see study hall as being a place where students shouldn't be watching movies and watching TV shows and those kinds of things, which, for my own children, that's often what happens right now. They should be using that time to be academically engaged, and they should be using that time productively if they're in the study hall. They would like to continue to allow cell phone use, personal device use, while students are in the hallways between classes, while they're in the lunchroom, and while they're in student commons. So some of that is due to enforcement and the reality of what does enforcement look like in the hallways, what does enforcement look like in the cafeteria. Also with the reality that these are young adults who are beginning to transition to, some of them already going off campus for work, for co-ops, for college courses. They're not, in terms of seniors, oftentimes there all day. So there is some coordination. They might be going to military recruiters and all those kinds of things. So allowing them some space to be able to have those kinds of dialogue if necessary during those different periods of the day. But as soon as they're in an instructional space, then it would be prohibited use at that point. So that's the desires of the administration. I'd love to get feedback, thoughts from the board, and go from there.
Just a question first, is there any suggested policy related to the earbuds or headphones?
Yes,
in
yeah,
that
good question.
package?
Eliminated. So at this point, no more use of earbuds, those kinds of things in the hallways.
So one thing to look at, I know the state is kind of going back and forth, I think, on bell to bell.
Correct.
Does it include lunch? How does that work, or is it just instructional? I mean, I think instructional makes sense, obviously. Attention needs to be on the instructor during those times. My one concern is in individuals that have behavioral issues or autism,
Yep.
and being able to cancel out some of these noises, or I know I work with a student scouting who sometimes just needs to listen to some music and get away from the social chaos. Is there some, maybe that's a IEP or something like that?
No, it's a great question, yeah.
As well.
Most of the policies that are out there by districts that have taken this step include those kind of options, not even just for IEP, but also for some health plan issues. Some students use it for diabetes and those kinds of things. So most of them, and Dr. Bowman has done some initial drafts, have a few clauses in there for those kinds of exceptions.
But I think to the speaker's point is, there is, and we get this in our daily lives as well, you go out to dinner with friends and everybody's on their phone, like, is there an opportunity in, lunch or the common area, to kind of unplug from that, or is, there's some value in actually socializing with your peers and playing games or whatever that is, although there could be behavioral issues, as I think about what I did in the lunchroom, maybe that was not so great, but, maybe that's more of a positive reinforcement situation rather than you can't have your phones, on lunch.
Yeah, I could speak to that briefly. Observing the school where I teach, we had, and to Mr. Kickline's point, we have a smaller school, so it's easier to enforce a ban at lunch. But we noticed that the social interaction at lunch really kicked in as soon as we got rid of phones. And so this year we had kids talking, they were going outside and playing games together, whereas the year before that, when they were allowed to have phones, they were literally all sitting at the table looking at their phone. And that's a shame, because a lot of school culture, a lot of school community is built in those moments where you have that that downtime at lunch. So if enforcement's the issue, I guess, with, like you said, there's people coming and going, it's a big room, but we saw really tremendous improvement in social relationships at lunch with cell phones being away.
And I would, just to kind of future-proof this a little bit too, cell phones are just the beginning of these personal devices, obviously. Watches, smart glasses,
Yep.
Who knows what else is coming. neural implants, I don't know. So we might need to consider language around that.
I like the no headphones aspect of if you're gonna allow phones in the cafeteria or in common areas, like at least making it where there's still some, like people are more approachable even if they're on the phone, if we know they're not listening to someone. And so there's still like an approachability, but I don't know if there's like something that could be like, again, kind of built into, like maybe there's just baskets on every table that encourage people to put their phone up. Like maybe it's something that, you know, this like our friend group, we're gonna try to, you know, do this and that's gonna be a norm at this table to encourage it, but not require it. So things built into the setup that encourage it, but maybe not require it. And I think if there's something visible like that, that again, we like to do at restaurants or, you know, at a family table, that again, it's a novel experience these days. And I think that this generation, there will be groups that want to do that, and there will also be individuals who, you know, might not want to participate in that.
Well, I think as an educational institution, I look at water bottles, right? I mean, Keaton's got a water bottle. I don't have a water bottle. At some point, they started teaching you to carry a water bottle with you at all times, and I missed that class, I guess. But at the same point, I mean, I think that's something we can be educated about in social media, cell phones, et cetera, and if the school can, you know, maybe have a club or these tables, you know, just come and unplug and, you know, learn what it's like to live without a digital device. You know, I think that might be beneficial to the community.
How do the kids learn how to flirt if they're like?
Well,
They text each other.
Snapchat.
So do you see for the classrooms that there's a, I don't know, the lock boxes or something hanging on the wall that they all drop their phones into, or is this something that they can still keep on their bodies and sneak under the table with?
So at this point, we're not advocating for purchasing the pouches, lock boxes, lockers, those kinds of things. At this point, many teachers, and again, I say many, there's quite a few that use the caddies, which is similar to, you know, just kind of a chart that has different, a pocket chart, is what we would call it at elementary level, but it's a caddy at secondary, that you can put, like a calculator caddy where you can put your phone in. Of course, there's the issue of burner phones and students that just put their case in there and don't actually have their phone in there. So all those aspects are, of course, the life of high school assistant principal, but that's what we would foresee.
So I guess we have to have a consequence if you're caught using your phone in your own classroom.
Yes, there would have to be a series of consequences. Right now, the high school is looking to not confiscate as the first step. Back in the day, that was what we did. The scars prove it. And they're looking to have a system of warnings, have potentially giving it to the teacher until the end of the period, and then obviously an additional consequence could be that it goes to the office, a parent has to pick it up. There could be an additional consequence assigned, so there would be a continuum of consequences depending on how many times it's happened.
Okay, so my last question is, do you think teachers, or not teachers, probably parents more so, saying, I want my child to have a phone in case there's a shooting or a disaster going on. My kid has to have a phone to be able to reach out to me to let me know she's okay or something.
Yeah, it's the most common concern, for sure, is people from a safety issue, and certainly people's reactions go to those worst case scenarios, as you mentioned, but even just parents say, I need to be able to contact my child when they're walking home from school, or when they get home, or when they go to work after school, those kinds of things. That is part of the reason why we're not looking at the lock boxes and the pouches and these situations where you literally have to go somewhere to unlock access to your phone. There's still an element of responsibility and accountability here with this approach, there's no doubt. So I think from the parents that I talk to, that gives them at least a degree of ease over those other situations where they know their child's phone is locked somewhere and they can't get to it. The reality is that if there is that worst case scenario, that we need the students listening to the adult in the room for whatever the issue is. We don't need them on the phone. We don't need them passing rumors or misinformation to other sites. We don't need our phone lines clogged up. But we know the reality is well past that at this point. But that's certainly the message that we send to parents when we have that conversation is, listen, we want your kids talking to the staff that are there. I remember a situation as assistant principal where the ambulance literally arrived to the school and said, we're here to help this child. And we were all in the office and had absolutely no idea what they were talking about. And it was because the child was in the bathroom upstairs and had decided to go there and call a parent and say, I'm having a problem, as opposed to getting help from an adult in the building. So we didn't know where this child was. So we ended up with the ambulance staff searching the building for who this child was, where they were, what's the issue. Which are just some of the challenges that we face with this one thing.
So have we gotten feedback or recommendations from the resource officers?
Yeah, in a school safety situation, having phones is much more dangerous because you're sheltering in place and phones ringing. So there's a lot of good. It's been studied. There's a lot of policies in place about it for sure.
But I'm just wondering if our resource officers were in any conversations, making
They fully agree, for sure.
Along those lines, is there any other, like you touched on the parents, where else do you anticipate pushback to this policy?
I think certainly from different student point of views. I think it's natural for some students, particularly those who use it more responsibly, to feel like, hey, I can use it responsibly during this time. Why do I have to keep it away during this time? Or, I truly am just listening to a song while it's independent work and I don't touch it the rest of the day. So I think it's easy for every student to have a different opinion on it. And let's face it, the reality is that it's an addictive device. I mean, it truly is an addictive device. So if you're trying to take something away from an addict, and I don't mean to sound overly dramatic about it, but if you're trying to take something away from an addict, they're going to have feelings about it. So I certainly anticipate that there will be those challenges. Yeah.
Do you have a start date? I'm sorry.
No.
Do you have a start date for this? Or are
Well,
you still waiting for
we're
the state to?
looking to see, no, we'd like to move forward and we're looking to see the board's feedback. If this is something that you're comfortable with us moving forward, even without formalizing the policy yet, with us being able to, again, K through 8 there's no changes there, so it's really specific to the high school. If you're comfortable with this approach at the high school or not, and if not, then we want to hear that so that we can adjust courses.
And that could be implemented anytime. You wouldn't have to wait for the start of the school year or semester.
It could be.
Are you
Needed.
looking for some kind of recommendation from us so that you can start day one next week?
Well,
Or do you feel
certainly
like-
isn't up for a vote, so I
Right.
want to be conscious of that, but just some general consensus from you all, some direction from you all, if this is a direction that you're comfortable with, or you say, you know what, we really want to have more conversation about this through the additional meetings, and we'd like to stay the course until that happens.
I think the crux is what you started with. I mean, a policy is only as good as, how it can be enforced. And so we've talked a lot about personal devices. I don't know exactly what the definition is because we know there are cell phones, but the wearables are really hard to enforce. Are those, watches, smartwatches can just be time-telling devices, or they can be cell phones on your wrist. And so how is the administration can enforce that?
Yeah, elementary's tackling that already because they have had watches and I don't think they had glasses in their policy before, but they've been navigating that very thing. And you're exactly right. There, you can have the exact same watch, one being hooked up to cellular and one that's not hooked up to cellular, and it's a completely different device. Ultimately, those become enforced when used. You know, because you can't tell if it's there, but you can tell certainly if you see them talking into it, and sending a text, or well, hey, you're using that now, or if they're if they've contacted someone and you become aware of that connection, you know, hey, you were using that in class, you're not allowed to be using it in class. So it would be more of a after the fact in those cases than anything. But what the glasses, you can see a little bit more. Most of them have a little light, but I don't know that that's true of all of them anymore. You know, that you can tell for sure that they're smart glasses.
Well, I guess the question is, because, okay, so one of my thoughts is, look, if cell phones are banned, then what's the alternative? And, you know, could I walk around the high school with a Walkman? Could I bring, like, you know, a portable gaming device? You know, like, what can I get away with? That would be my thought. But what are we trying to prevent with this? What are we trying to fix? Like, so a cell phone can be used for many different things, but are we looking at just removing distraction, removing the addiction, you know, so that, what is the end goal that we're trying to do here?
I would say the key is presence in the school environment. And I think that's what Mr. Reedy would probably say about where he's come to that place is that you're not going to change the addiction just in the 6 hours during the day. You know, those are, is that even our role to address that? I think there's a place for education, there's a place for that, but ultimately, how do we make sure that students have made the most of the time that they're in our building? We want that to happen during class time, no doubt. And from the high school's perspective, they want that to happen during study halls as well as an instructional space. They want that to happen when students walk into the nurse's office, when they walk into the counseling office, when they go into these instructional spaces in the building where we need you to be present. We need you to be here with us, person to person. They're not as concerned about it in that sense between classes, at lunch, in the commons, you know, before and after school. But how do we increase and maintain that presence?
So I'm assuming the teachers are not able to look at their phone either during class.
That would not be part of the policy. Certainly. Discuss, Ken? Right now, we're not advocating for that. I would say this, that if, and I have, walked into a classroom, and typically it's with a substitute, we have many wonderful subs, but if I see a substitute or a teacher on their phone, it's going to be addressed. But there are many teachers that use it for timers, for students to go to the nurse, for students to go to a scheduled appointment, for them to go to reading intervention, for all kinds of different things. So I would have a hard time with beyond our expectation of them being present with their class. They shouldn't be standing there just texting people when we address that when we see it. But that's just professional responsibilities.
Dr. Missa, or no? I just, like, have you seen kids come to school with switches?
Like Nintendo Switches. I'm sure that there's been some in study halls and all those kinds of things. I've seen them in lunch from time to time. And some of those also are dedicated devices. Some of those can connect to the internet as well. So even all of those are different. But those would classify as personal.
Are we providing iPads to any of the kids? Like, are they?
Not at the high school level.
So it seems like the core value here is we want that immersion focus at school. So I think, from my standpoint, I think setting that expectation at the beginning, I think it's best to do this at the beginning of the school year. Whether the policy exists or not, but the expectation is we want you to work hard and then you can play hard. You be present in the classroom. We're going to be working on that this year as the high school. You know, how that pans out as far as disciplinary measures or policy, that can be worked out. But I mean, for me, like, I think that makes sense. But I think there is also the social aspect where we should encourage students to also be present with one another too. You know, that enforcement of that.
In terms of, oh, go ahead.
Mrs. Sutton.
I was just going to go back to Mr. Kickline's point earlier about those other devices, and I'm curious in K-8, are those part of that they're excluded also?
Yeah,
Like the Switch and all those things are not allowed
Yes,
to do that?
yeah. The only thing that they haven't previously included was the glasses, just because they're so new at this point, but even the watches have been addressed.
So all those devices at the high school would also be excluded, they're now allowed?
Correct, yeah. What I would suggest, I think there's 3 directions that we see this policy going. We see the schools that just say bell to bell prohibited. You can't have it anywhere, beginning of the day to end of the day. There's some local districts that have done that. There's some local districts that have said they've made it a point as a board in policy to say we honor the instructional space and it is not allowed in any instructional space. It is principal discretion outside of instructional spaces. That is another approach that policies have looked like. The third approach is, I wouldn't advocate for this. It's basically what we have now, just in an older version, and it just says everything is principal discretion, and it's up to the principal to decide. You could modernize it by putting in these other devices and those kinds of things, but there's no teeth to that. There's really no value to that other than the modernization of the policy. So I really think it, in my opinion, it comes down to those 2. I think is, do you want to do board bell to bell and it's prohibited throughout, or is there a place for some of these spaces to still allow it? And in our case, what that would look like is at K through 8, the answer is still no, but at the high school it would be trying it at lunch and between periods.
If we're behind that as a board, I would not want to see us wait until another school year because of communication. I think there are intermediate opportunities, like, I mean, what police have done with cell phones, where there was a window where you got a warning, where you're able to use that as an opportunity to communicate what does and doesn't count. So I mean, I think this could be implemented fairly quickly in that way. And then to say, you know, this is going to go into effect at the start of the new semester or after Christmas break, or because if we feel like it's a good direction to go, I would not want to see us wait another school year to implement it.
Are the kids' Wi-Fi like a guest Wi-Fi compared to what a teacher might have access to Wi-Fi? Because I'm just thinking, is there a way to turn off the guest Wi-Fi?
So I would say this. I would say by and large, they do not have credentials to get onto our Wi-Fi. I have no doubt that there are students out there that have somehow, some way, through somebody else's device, through a family, friend, whatever, have gotten into our Wi-Fi. But for the most part, their access is through just cellular.
So it's not like we can cut off.
No, it's a device. I can set up a cellular and I can set up a hotspot and I can share my hotspot with as many people as I want, and they can all jump in and use it and have access to it, and I never have to have ever connected to the school's site.
So you can't paint all the walls with the Wi-Fi blocking the paint.
For a while, there was some sort of device that you could like block cellular, but that obviously has its own issues to do that in your building. So.
I think keeping study halls part of the no devices is good. I think it's good for students and people, like, to learn how to be bored if they're bored. I mean, that is a life skill. That's a life skill. Also, like, read a book. Like, you know, there are lots of things that you can, you know, write a book. like write some poetry, draw, like there's things that can be done. And also, like, you could just be bored, and that's okay. That's okay.
Well, how many great ideas have come from being bored?
Yeah.
So there is a value in that, whereas instead we're always on, always getting that dopamine rush. And, so
I mean, that's where thinking happens. I mean, I'm someone who, and I think about like all these students in school, like their parents are also addicted. And so like that's what's being modeled for them. And I say that as someone who's addicted. And I had cell phones in high school, like, and my son doesn't, but he's watching me, and it's sorry.
Yeah, you are the
We're
youngest.
looking at each other like cell phones weren't even invented back then. A cell phone was
We didn't have
this big
computers
and
back
that
then.
wide,
Like
and a satellite
like
radio,
this
and you had
way.
to crank it up to get it powered up. So.
Well, I totally would be happy to see us move in that direction.
Just to make sure I know which direction.
What do you want?
Full prohibition or
Yeah,
openness to the high school?
it looks like the state's gonna pass it for the 27-28 school year. So.
That's another year away, though.
Yeah.
And what are they passing? Full?
The bell to bell, with exceptions for medical, for IVs and.
So I feel like, I don't know if it has to be a gradual thing, and, how well does this, like, is a trial period, like, how well do the students do with managing, turning off their phones or not using their phones for classroom, and if it doesn't seem to be any better than it was last year, then we have to go, bell to bell or something. Especially if it's gonna go that way.
It'd be a lot easier to implement and to enforce once it's a state law, as opposed to, we're gonna do this on our own.
But it would also be easier to have a trial period where we have a less restrictive.
Same.
That's true.
The only thing I would, a trial period makes it sound like we're just trying it, and if it doesn't
Well,
work, we're gonna eliminate it.
Yeah.
But I know a ramp-up period where we gradually move into, we do something now and then expand on it or increase the time frame.
Well, we don't even have to communicate that.
Right.
I'm just saying,
Yeah.
if it is gonna be passed, if there's a good chance it's gonna be passed by state, whatever we do is a
Right.
kind of a prelude to that.
And we feel that
It's
the
one of the
governor
proper
has been very vocal about the fact that he wants it in place, and I don't think he was happy that it was eliminated from this year's budget negotiations and everything for one reason or another.
Can I ask why, if you know down the road in one more school year it's gonna be bell to bell, why would you not wanna institute that now?
I think there is some value in the ramp-up approach. I think we've seen some other school districts around us have some success with that. But I'll also say that there's some other school districts around us that would tell you that they've had success with just doing it. I think in particularly Mr. Reedy's case, correct me if I'm wrong, he would also say that in his conversations with some of those administrations, that the enforcement of it hasn't necessarily been exactly what's always advertised. But
yeah, I think it's one thing to see just let's go to bell, but I personally I would tell you I struggle with that, having been a high school administrator too, because going cold turkey, for lack of a better term, makes it very difficult, because inevitably you're going to have a strong pushback from a larger contingent with we're pulling the rug out from under you right now, and there wasn't any time to kind of adjust or get used to or grow into that period. That's why I think I would, as Dr. Bitts pointed out, those two approaches, arguably to me, the policy with principal discretion would be advantageous in the sense that it allows us, if need be, even this school year, to go further towards full prohibition if needed. So as we are taking that progression now towards even being a little more restrictive at MASH with this, proposed concept, if that were to not be successful, we could adjust accordingly even this year if need be in preparation for what's proposed to be next year. But again, we don't have a crystal ball. They could say they're gonna pass it, and then eventually it couldn't be. So I think we're still trying to determine what's best for us. And even if it's passed next year, we have to comply. That doesn't mean we have to agree. So I think the conversation still comes back to, for me right now, is what do we think is best for our kids? And from my perspective and my conversations with Mr. Reedy, the focus on presence for sure is a priority. I think the one aspect I would argue that also is included in that is our responsibility to teach responsibility. So as they are transitioning into young adulthood, the real world, if you will, and some of our upperclassmen are doing that earlier than later now, is for us to help them realize that there's a time and place. And some are going to transition a lot better than others. Some are never going to transition well. Like we see that in adult life, as alluded to already this evening. It's something that we all I guess, will combat because devices aren't going anywhere. So I guess that's kind of my perspective is I think, what do we think is best for our kids here at Mechanicsburg? And what allows at least some flexibility, in my opinion, for now, to prepare for what may come. And regardless of what may come, what do we think is best? And is there some flexibility in that so that we can adjust along the way if need be?
And I think that's what I was trying to allude to, that, like, if the kids understand they're going to be lucky to have the phones during, lunch or in between classes and stuff, because it could get worse, and it may get worse. And if we don't see you guys complying, we can make it worse,
I've kind of I think I've come around to making it allowable at lunch, but having maybe creating a culture of where we're giving you agency, you can choose to do this, or you can opt out, and there's kind of that taking that ownership of this experience where we're present with friends, and it's unlike study hall where we can't socialize. You can socialize and connect with other people here.
Because back in the day, we used to pass notes,
The only thing I see the privileges, the seniors, if they have a good academic record, no disciplinary, they can use their phone during lunch, or it could be as a matter of privilege as opposed to the penalty.
The only thing,
that would be?
I know.
Can I borrow your phone?
well, the only thing I see is, you've taken the phone away for periods of time. Lunch comes around, they're gonna want to make up for all that lost time, and they're gonna be out there, and you're gonna have them on their phone even more because of the fact that they haven't been on their phone for the last 3 or 4 hours, so now they have to be on it. Not that I think that should allow them to, we should do something different, but I see that as, I haven't had my friend with me for the last 3 hours, now I have him with me, and I'm gonna use it every second I can during that lunch period, and just do that, so.
I think we take this year, it's a preparation year, we could kind of throw the student under the bus and just say, this is what's coming, folks. But what we want to do as Mechanicsburg is to educate and to prepare.
Practice.
To have that positive sense of values. Let's be present with one another, let's be present with the education process. And, I don't know if it makes sense to have a policy if we're just going to change it in another year, but all the other stuff can be started now through the principal or through the administration.
I think there's a very real possibility that even the passage of the legislation may simply just say every district has to have a policy. So even the passage of the legislation may not ultimately give us anything.
So would we have to write a policy, or would this become an AR?
It would be a policy, and that's, I would say, from the K-8 perspective, they're excited for the opportunity for this to be beyond just a rule, which it is right now, and actually be a policy with the teeth of the board behind it saying, no, you can't have these. And parents at the K-8 level and students at the K-8 level with this have been really good ultimately. But having that additional backing of board policy is a real positive thing for those administrators to be able to say, no, we're all in this together, and this is the rule here in Mechanicsburg.
How do field trips enter into all this?
Yeah.
That's instructional time,
It would be considered instructional time.
and no phone.
Correct.
So theoretically, the fact that the middle K through 8 is already doing it should make it, I mean, it's not a radical change for an 8th grader who's becoming a 9th grader.
Correct. Yeah.
I mean, that,
So in 4 years, it'll be not an issue, huh?
Just one final, point too, I think, to accredit NASH, they have and will continue, I think, to creatively address some of the ideas at lunch of encouraging person-to-person engagement. So whether it's game days that they have and they give board games out and kids, they're encouraging kids to do that, or to your point, Mrs. Strelo, about baskets, like, I think there are some creative ideas there. They've already started that, so they could expand that as well, in ways that would encourage kids, to engage in that way. And arguably, I think there are kids that desire that really, they're looking for the permission, even from their peers, to put their phones away. That some of them are, the peer pressure is, I should be on my phone because everybody else is on my phone, even though I don't really care about being on my phone. So there's an interesting dichotomy there.
So, is there, what I would be interested in, is there general support for us to continue down the road of principal discretion at those non-instructional times that we talked about? Or is there a greater desire to see bell to bell and want to see us have further conversation about that?
I'd say work towards a policy that is instructional.
I'm sorry.
Work towards a policy that's for instructional only in high school. And then obviously put in the policy K through 8.
and a lot of that for me comes from, I mean, you all know, and our principals know best what's they think can work and what they can enforce. So the fact that you're bringing that as your primary recommendation, I would support that.
I would too. I think it would be way harder to enforce that at lunchtime than in the classroom.
I wish it could be bell to bell, but it comes down to the enforcement piece for me. I'd love for it to be bell to bell. And I wonder if, and maybe y'all are already doing it somewhere, but there's an educational opportunity, like a facilitate discussion, whether it's like everyone in second period on, a couple times a year, where there's discussion facilitated, where we're also getting feedback on how things are going, what's working, what's not working, and maybe, and like all those second period teachers are just kind of summarizing and reporting back, and you're, just taking that feedback, but also like, I just think it's.
I think you're exactly right, and from the students as well. We need to continue to get their feedback, because this very well might not work, and ultimately say, you know what, this just continues to expand, and this is still not the environment we want to have here, and we need to give it a go at bell to bell. I would suggest, I think this is a good first step. I have my personal misgivings about it as well, but I respect where the high school's at with it, and I think ultimately taking a measured approach first to see how that goes, I do think is the right first step.
So my next question is, are we looking to wait until the policy catches up with us to start, or are we looking to start next week?
I think if there's general support for the concept that's been presented, then we would look to start next week. And the policy would be more about nailing down all of the wording and the exceptions and all of those kinds of things.
As you said, Mr. Reedy, no, you didn't say that, but you said that it would be easier to enforce if the school board had made a policy.
Mm-hmm.
So perhaps it's in Mr. Reed's interest to maybe draft it and have us.
Yeah, I think we have Dr. Bowman's been working on some initial possibilities for us, so I think we'll be able to have something for the end of August.
Will that get communicated to parents before the school year?
and the high school administration is comfortable with, I mean, in some ways, we're building the plane as we fly it a little bit. Is there a danger of sabotaging the end goal by not having maybe all the ducks in a row?
Yeah, I think it's certainly something I've thought through as well, and it's a fear, but I also think that with K through 8 having been as strong as it's been to this point, and the reality that at the high school there have been pockets where this has been the case already. There have been some teachers, I'm sure some guests would be able to name some of those teachers who have been very strict about this, and it has not been a question about whether you have your phone and they have the caddy already and students put them in there. It's more about consistency at the high school than anything else.
And all of the seniors, like this policy, the middle school's been in place for a number of years.
Yeah.
So every student has experienced this policy.
Every student that has had Mr. Yan as a principal has
Yeah.
experienced it.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get the scope of
Yes,
what
yeah.
that looks
Maybe
like.
he should make their first announcement at the school, first day of school. Hi, this is Mr. You know what this means?
I think he
It
would.
sounds like the principal has discretion right now. They can craft what they want this to be essentially from what they can support from discipline and enforcement, and then bring that to the board. And then obviously that would put a bow on it and help him enforce it.
In my experience, the half measures leaves interpretation. If one teacher is enforcing it and others not, then it becomes a real problem for administrators. And I think the bell-to-bell is just really simple. And then the policy progressively, like it's warning, and then it's a warning with your parent coming in to like pick up the phone, and then it's a warning with confiscation for a day, and then it's a confiscation for a week, and you know, but then you're getting into hairy things as well. I mean, yeah, but that's what we were doing, and it's successful this year. We had a bell-to-bell ban this year. Totally different culture. It's a lot improved.
So procedurally wise, we're kind of like taking a vote, but we don't really have an item on the agenda and we can't really put an item on the agenda at this point right now and take a vote on it on the same night. So are we in a gray area, or are we okay with just, since we're looking at just allowing principal discretion to, which is kind of part of the policy as it is today, we just continue with that, and then over the next couple of meetings work on strengthening the language, getting the policy in place, and then following that procedural part of going through and the public awareness of the policy change, and then actually voting on it in September.
Yes, because the reality is right now it's principal discretion to make the rule. So he still has that opportunity, speaking to the high school, speaking about the high school, to do that. What we really wanted to hear was, is the board in an extreme position in a different way that we need to say, whoa, Mr. Reedy, hold on doing anything because the board actually isn't into this at all, which I didn't suspect was going to be the case, or the board is pretty strongly about bell to bell and doesn't want principal discretion. So we need to, sorry for the pun, hold the phone on this and really make sure that the board really is with us. I'm not hearing that. I'm hearing some openness to a first step of principal discretion, so I think I would be comfortable with Mr. Reedy taking those steps with the current high school rules. And then,
It comes down to messaging, because you gotta tell people before they start school, so I think either way, it needs to be communicated that policy is coming, whether it's from the state or it's from the board. And this is what we're going to lead with part of the principal's direction. But, just so you know, by the end of the year, there will be a policy in place, and so, get involved with your local government. But,
How many minutes are actually in between classes? 5?
I think it's 5 right now.
sorry.
Is it 5?
Yeah, 5 minutes between
How
classes.
much
Yes.
can you do in 5 minutes? I don't know.
Oh.
I know how
See the
much you can
fingers
do in
groove.
5 minutes,
Don't
but,
put the challenge out there.
but then you're gonna get into the classroom and everybody's phones are gonna going off because everybody just texts each other during the 5 minutes.
Or some of those concerns I have, but
What's that?
good
I
measure
could-
first step.
I could go without the 5 minutes between classes.
So, I'll ask one more. Are we fine with going forward with principal discretion and having the start of Mr. Reedy and having it instructional time based on the definition of what we've defined as instructional time? Is there anyone that is vehemently opposed to putting at least that piece in place? And then we take a look at the next round of adding the policy.
And then the headphones would be built with the, correct, okay, yeah.
Other than the exceptions we talked about.
Right.
Yeah, I mean,
Correct.
from my standpoint, Mr. Reedy has the ability right now to make that decision. He should be, equally applying that in all cases, et cetera. And then, yes, we'll have to bring that to the policy for the next session, at least for the first reading. That seems to be, my general direction is instruction.
I certainly don't hear anyone saying that they want less restriction than what is on the table right now. So ultimately, we can always make it more strict,
Yeah,
but I don't hear
exactly.
anybody saying
Or you can make it more strict
to stay away from
next year, if you want to write that. I think there's been policies written where it's over time it changes.
I think I have what I need. Appreciate the dialogue.
Thanks for you and your team's work with that.
It's the end of my report.
Thank you, Dr. We're going to move on to some of the other reports and presentations, and I know in some cases it's probably the groups have not had an opportunity to meet, which is okay if that's the case, since everybody has taken a break over the last couple of months. But Mrs. Strelo, Capital Area Intermediate Unit.
Yes, we met on June 25th and heard the 26-27 IU Early Intervention Education Plan. Otherwise, it was a very brief meeting, and we did not meet in July.
Thank you. Any questions? Thank you. Capital, the Cumberland Perry Area Career and Technical Center report. Mr. Kicklin.
Yes, so in June, we voted to have a special session in July because of the ongoing construction concerns. So we did meet July 27th. Luckily, we were able to get in the building because they had turned the power off to the building in order to do some of the integration between the old and new section, and they turned it back on. The main breaker did not function properly, so that still actually is something that needs to be looked at because of the level of electrical expertise needed. That's not a cheap fix either. We did have a very good report by Mr. Greg LeMay, who the center has hired to be the construction intermediary. They have a name for that, which is rhymes. I can't remember what it is right now.
Clerk of the Works.
What's that?
Clerk of the Works.
Clerk of the Works, yes. And he did a really good job at going over the entire project, really from when it started, demonstrating to that board that we're really not that far off from where we intended to be, because the whole project did get a late start due to a number of factors, and that the project is in general on budget right now. They have a budget for furniture that seemed to be significant enough to get the building open. There was talk again about the electrical main cut that one of the contractors did. Pretty much all of the sources, the solicitor, everybody we've talked to, there's really not a way that we can recoup those costs. There was no electrical line in any of the drawings, which is very odd. The contractor supposedly did all the mitigation work that they needed to do. So
At this point, it seems a decision's been made, let's focus on launch, let's focus on opening. Let's not worry about all of that, again, since everything is on record. So as of the meeting, everything is on schedule to launch unless any other
No,
things come
same.
out. I haven't heard anything.
Same updates here.
A lot of it is being done this week, and then opening scheduled for August 19th,
I think that's right. Yes.
So hopefully have everything open before then. There was a number of votes on change orders, mostly having to do with overtime, because some of these contractors, are waiting on the floor to get put in before they can put the toilets in. And so they're going to have 3 days to put all the toilets, things like that. So they're going to be working overtime to get everything ready. The entire building will not be open all at once. They are able to move some things around. So the final completion date, I think, is still October 27th. Thereabouts, and that is in line again with the original project at the time. So we do have another meeting coming up August 24th. See how things did. We did recommend that we'd like to have a nice big party once all this blows over and celebrate the new CTC extension.
Very good, thank you. Any questions for Mr. Kickline? All right, thank you. Wildcat Foundation report, Mrs. Huff.
We had our golf tournament at the end of July, which was a huge success. Thank you to everybody who participated and all of our sponsors, and to Jen Shockey, who was our chairperson. She does a great job, but lots of volunteers also were there. We made over $31,000 from that, which was really good, and that will all get moved back into money for grants for kids, because that's what we do. And before you know it, we'll be planning for the Wildcat Foundation night, February 19th, 2027. Before you know it.
Any questions? Thank you, Mrs. Huff. 3.05, the PSBA legislative report. I have no report at this moment. One of the things I will send out to board members is Advocacy Day is coming up. It's usually October timeframe. I will get the actual date for it. What we try to do is meet with as many of our representatives and the senator and just talk about the issues that are important to us, and hopefully continue to work with them to advocate for what we need in the district. So I'll send that information out, and then if anybody is interested, let me know and we can coordinate that. It's usually, there are different times it's been in person, and other times it's been kind of more of a virtual. So we'll see where it kind of falls this year.
I'll just add to that, if there's folks that do intend to engage, want to engage, we can certainly put together some talking points and data and information for you to be armed with for those conversations. So don't let that get in the way from you.
Yeah, I think that you should start on that now. I think we should rent a bus and go over.
We'll be happy to respond to this stuff. It's already ready.
Thank you.
Thank you. And then from a board president's report, we did have, I wanted to make an announcement of an executive session that was held this evening at 6 p.m. to discuss personnel and legal matters. At this point, we will move on to new business, athletics and recreation, 5.01, appointment of the fall recreation staff.
I'd like to ask the board to approve the appointment of the summer and fall recreation staff as presented.
Do we have a second? Yes, great. Any questions or comments?
I just want to commend, everybody involved in the recreation in this district. It's great, and it really stands out among the area that I am aware of.
Thank you.
Unless I hear a negative response, I'll record the roll call as a unanimous vote.
Thank you. On to 5.02, appointment of the athletic spring coaches. Dr. Lebo.
I'd like to ask the board to approve the spring coaching assignments for the 2026-2027 school year as presented.
we have a second?
Second.
Any questions or comments?
I would just like to affirm Mr. Behanick and the athletic department for getting us these early. We used to get them pretty late and ask for time to approve those, and I think it's very timely to be able to approve next spring's now.
I agree. A couple of years back, one of the board members advocated that we would do it almost a season ahead of time and that we continue to carry on that tradition. So it works out well to see it instead of approving after they've already started. So thank you on that. Any other comments? Hearing none?
Unless I hear a negative response, I'll record the roll call as a unanimous vote.
Thank you. Moving on to item 6, new business, budget and finance. 6.01, treasurer's report. Ms. Morgan.
I'd like to ask the board to approve the treasurer's report as per the attachments, which include the following. Number 1 is the treasurer's report for July 2026. Number 2 is the board budget report, July 2026. 3 is the general fund invoices paid 6/10/2026 through 6/30/2026. Check number 73601 through 73716 in the amount of $1,043,985.20. Number 4 is the general fund invoices paid July 1, 2026 through August 10th, 2026. Check number 73717 through 73943 in the amount of $2,803,159.12. Number 5 is the electronic payments in the amount of $4,462,343.37. Number 6 is the general fund invoices payable, check number 73944 through 73968 in the amount of $738,440.28. Number 7 is the capital reserve fund invoices paid June 10th, 2026 through June 30th, 2026, and check number 2000 through 2003 in the amount of $98,419.63. Number 8 is the capital reserve fund invoices paid for July 1, 2026 through August 10th, 2026. Check number 2004 through 2014 in the amount of $251,681.97. Number 9 is the series of 2024 construction fund invoices paid June 10th, 2026 through June 30th, 2026. Check number 255 in the amount of $29,750.20. Number 10 is the series of 2024 construction fund invoices paid July 1, 2026 through August 10th, 2026. And check number 256 through 259 in the amount of $151,268.72. And lastly, number 11 is the SAF and TF quarterly board report for March through June 2026.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any questions or comments?
As a matter of protocol, and I love that Ms. Morgan reads all this, but is it required by law that we read all this into the record? Just asking.
So we've actually periodically discussed that. It's not. As a board, traditionally, the thought was being as transparent about these numbers as possible. So that's why we've traditionally done it, but it's not.
I got 2 briefcases delivered to me on Friday,
Oh my.
and I go through every invoice, so yeah, I have to tell you what I've looked at, okay?
We can be curious.
I would
Like I
just
said, I
say
love
we
it. I
could
just-
see. I'd be happy with seeing it. I don't know that reading it needs to go on the record, but I'm kind of with your. I think I raised that question before as well, but I'm willing to defer if Tracy really wants, Mrs. Morgan really wants to read that.
I personally agree that I think it needs to be read out loud so the community knows how much money we're spending.
And that's being reviewed. I think it's important I was just wondering. Like I said, you do a wonderful job. And I filled in one evening, and it was, ooh, that's a lot. But
Any additional comments?
We're grateful for your work.
Yes.
There are little checks in the bag.
My comments have no reflection on the.
I'm just saying, I worked 10 hours this weekend that I didn't get paid for either.
Hearing none,
Unless I hear a negative response, I'll record the roll call as a unanimous vote.
thank you. 6.02, approval of the transportation service contract with Assist Services, LLC, DBA Buckled In. Ms. Morgan.
I'd like to ask the board to approve the 2-year transportation service contract with Buckled In / Assist Services, which will begin with the 2026-2027 school year.
Do we have a second? Any questions or comments?
I just want to ask, is this a new vendor?
So we've used Assist before, just as maybe by way of reminder for the school board, we always go to BNS first as our first for all buses, all vans. But in this environment, especially with vans, sometimes it's hard to find drivers. And so then we will lean on the intermediate unit as a second option. And so then not always does the intermediate unit have availability. And then we go to these third-party providers because they tend to be more expensive. And so we try to use them more to fill in the gaps than anything. We really rely on BNS first, IU second, and then these types of additional supplementary service contracts. So that's generally our approach.
Because I know in the past I've voiced how expensive this
Sure.
can be. And I didn't know if we had any more luck with having more vans through BNS this year than we have had in the past.
And we talked to Scott about that, and he does add what he can, but then he also has some of his own limitations between the 29 or 30 buses and then maybe another 20 or 30 vans that he probably has altogether. So.
I think the other approach that we've taken is looking at the other side of it. Our student services and special ed folks have done a pretty good job of revisiting and looking at with a more critical eye during IEP meetings of, okay, this student has been on a van. Do they need to continue to be on a van? Because in some cases, for a variety of factors, they don't need to continue to be. So that's the other side that I would say those two departments have done a nice job of trying to be cognizant of.
So would that be like a change in the IEP or something then?
In most cases, it would be, yeah. It's a related service that students are getting. But again, in some cases, it just kind of continues to carry along with the child, and unless somebody stops and says, do they really still need this? Maybe it's continuing for no reason.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Hearing none,
Unless I hear a negative response, I'll record the roll call as a unanimous vote.
thank you. 6.03, tax policies report, Mr. Kickling.
I'd like to ask the board to approve the tax policies report as presented in the attachment.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any questions or comments? Hearing none,
Unless I hear a negative response, I'll record the roll call as a unanimous vote.
thank you. Moving on, new business curriculum. Item 7.01, student services contracts. Mrs. Huff,
I'd like to ask the board to approve the student services contracts as presented.
do we have a second? Second. Any questions or comments? Hearing none,
Unless I hear a negative response, I'll record the roll call as a unanimous vote.
thank you. Moving on to item 9, new business personnel. 9.01, personnel report. Dr. Lebo.
I'd like to ask the board to approve the personnel report as presented.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any questions or comments?
not a big deal, but I see Mr. Bradley's name is still there under the,
Yes, we'll have him removed.
Yeah, that was a typo there. We had brought over the personnel report attachment, but then when we updated it, Board Docs just didn't seem to update it for some reason, so we'll make a note.
no,
But we do thank you for reading it anyways. Any other comments? And as you will see, it is a long list. Traditionally, that's what you normally see in the September time, the August-September timeframe, with a lot of new hires and people changing job assignments and things.
I'm excited to say that we have every professional staff position in the district filled. So, every position. Support staff, we've got probably about half a dozen openings, which is better than some. But every professional staff position.
It's a nice way to start school.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Good job.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none.
Unless I hear a negative response, I'll record the roll call as a unanimous vote.
Thank you. Moving on to new business policy, 11.01, non-resident senior status. Mr. Frangel.
Yes, we have 2 students who are non-residents this year who'd like to finish their senior year. So I asked the board to approve 2 non-resident tuition-free students to complete the 26-27 school year.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any questions or comments? Hearing none.
Unless I hear a negative response, I'll record the roll call as a unanimous vote.
Thank you. Moving on to item 12, hearing of visitors, 12.01. We have reached the second opportunity for public comment. This opportunity is reserved for comments on issues not listed on the agenda and not being voted upon this evening. As a reminder, public comment is limited to residents and taxpayers of the school district. Public comment will be limited to 3 minutes per individual and requires community members to observe a reasonable decorum. If you would like to address the board, please share your name and the municipality in which you reside.
My name is Eli Kickline. I'm from Bumblebee Hollow neighborhood, and I would like to bring up the topic of the school district's policy on vaping. Now, I understand it is illegal for people 21 or under 21 years of age. That's set in stone. And they mentioned that in the beginning of the high school year, like in a presentation. But I think somewhere where they could improve on that is actually encouraging students to, if they see that, like report that as soon as they can. Because not trying to sugarcoat it or anything, but vaping kills. And, it's not like you're tattling on someone for, swearing or something like that. I think that apart from emphasizing that it is illegal and you should not be doing it at all in school, but also encouraging all manner of students, basically saying, if you see that, please reach out to an adult and explain what happened, because, you're not going to get in trouble and you could potentially be saving someone from a very dark place. Thank you.
So do you feel there should be counseling in place for students like who are, maybe it's a disciplinary procedure, maybe something that's disciplinary, but maybe have a counselor meet with them and go over the dangers of vaping?
Yeah, I feel pretty strongly about discipline towards it, because it's not one of those things where you can just be kind of lenient. Like, in my opinion, you really have to hammer down on it, or otherwise they could end up, overdosing or developing a lifelong addiction. But I do think that counseling should definitely be there and in place to where, students who, maybe it's their first time, like they've just been caught, giving them a chance, like, you can recover from this, people around the world have difficulties with this, you're not alone, and get them the help that they need.
Thank you, Mr. Paul.
And that's something I think our school resource officers are probably handling. Obviously, THC on top of that and various flavors of that is dangerous and illegal. to your point, you want it to be something that other students should report these instances more frequently.
Yeah, actually, I have a personal anecdote. When I was in lunch, I saw some people passing around gummies out of a black, opaque, like little baggie, and I was like, ooh, I mean, I felt kind of weird because I've never seen that before, but clearly it's suspicious. So I think, like, you know, hammering down that, like, you know, trust your gut, you know, if something seems wrong, it probably might be, and, you know, I get a lot of people who are angry at me for me giving or having them get like drug tested or whatnot. They're not happy at that, but realizing, you know, you could potentially be stopping something big there.
Thank you. Item 13, Ms. Morgan.
I would like to ask the board to adjourn.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All right. Thank you.
What am
Thank
I
you.
supposed to say?